So in this episode, I'm going to show you how to grade D-log and HLG footage correctly. I took my Pocket Osmo 3 down to the beach. I'm not a cinematographer, but I did my best. I've put together a little montage. I'm going to show you how to correctly color manage it. I'm going to show you how to grade it. I'm going to show you some tips and tricks I've got on how to make this sort of footage look its best. So apologies for my dodgy camera work there. You'll be pleased to know we're getting onto the colour side of things in a moment. But on the Osmo 3, there's three different settings. You've got normal mode, D-log M and HLG. So let's take a look at the edit and we're going to break that down. So here's the edit, nice and simple, nice and short. And you'll notice actually this thing here, I've got this solid colour on the bottom. So the first thing I want to show you is that. What is that doing? I noticed on this, even though it's a gimbal, that my horizons weren't straight on all the shots. Now that might be a setting that I've done. I don't really know how to use this that well, but I needed to fix that. So what I did is I put a bright orange solid color down on the bottom, just from the generators here. So you just grab the solid color and let me go to a shot that had, this one here. I had to put a bit of rotation in it, okay? So when you rotate to straighten the horizon, obviously you have to fix the zoom. So let me just reset the zoom here. And what you can see, if I just exaggerate this slightly, as I'm rotating, I'm seeing the background as bright orange. And this means I'm not going to get any errors on the outside. I'm not going to get any blanking showing through. Now on my Omniscopes, I can set that to be a permanent thing. But if you haven't got Omniscope, that's a really good way of doing it. And to get my horizon straight, what I did, I went to color mode, and I go to my timeline, so it affects every shot on the timeline, and I put this effect on, which is just a grid. You just grab this from the OFX, and it gives me a grid. Now I'll go back to the edit page. So I lined them all up first with the grid on, and then just took it off. So what you can do now is line up that horizon. I'm just lining it up to the grid, and then I'm just going to zoom in, making sure I can't see any orange outline, and that's it, done. And then go back to the color page and switch that grid off. So just before we carry on, I've got some exclusive news about a brand new product just released today from this video's sponsor, Audio. So the music in the montage at the beginning of this episode was found using a product that's literally just been released, and it took all the pain out of searching through countless tracks and trying to find the right music, which, let's face it, everyone hates doing really. So Hands AI is a brand new feature from Audio, and it is the first of its kind, and I was lucky to get beta access to enable me to make this episode. So what is it? So if you know Audio, you know that they already have a feature called Link Match AI, and this is brilliant. It allows me to take any song from Spotify or YouTube, anything that I like, copy the URL, put it into Link Match AI, and it will find me a similar track in the Audio catalog, but then obviously I'm licensed. Hands AI takes this to the next level. So just imagine, for example, you can't even think of a song. So of the millions and billions of songs that have ever been made, you can't think of a single song that you'd like to even try and match to. You literally type in your thoughts into Hands AI and it will come up with the goods. So I personally like having music with stops and starts. So when I'm doing montages, I like little breaks and stops. So I typed in find music for a medium paced montage showing Brighton and the beach with stops and starts in it. And I put that into Hands AI and it came up with 6 suggestions. And in fact, the first one that it came up with was the one that I actually used in this episode. So you don't even need to know the song that you want to use. So you can enter anything, put things like find me music with a cinematic build up for a car ad, find music that suits a busy kitchen scene, and give me quirky options. Hands AI is available to pro users, and I can get you 70% off your first year using the link in the description, and use my code Darren at checkout. So pro users still get the other great audio features like Link Match AI that we've just been speaking about. You get all the stems, so you can take out the vocals, you can remix the guitar, that sort of stuff, and you get the huge sound effects library. So I just want to thank Audio for sponsoring this episode. Not only are they passionate about their music, but they're really lovely people to deal with. So thank you for sending me this top as well. Use the link and my code Darren if you want to support my channel. And let's get back to the episode. So here's our edit. You can see I've got all my DJI footage in here, and you can even see here this one's Rec 2100, so I've got some HLG in there as well. Let's go to the color page, and if I take that off, you'll see this particular shot is D-log M. It's got a nice flat log profile. So the first thing we need to address is our color management, as always. So I'm going to switch that grade back on. We've got here our fixed node tree, and I'm basically going to do another version of this and break it down a little bit more simple. So this is kind of the finished grade. So let me just switch to my version. And what I've got here are, these are all just blank nodes. So if I just disable those, there's absolutely nothing going on. And I've got a CST here and a CST at the end. And let's look at our color management settings quickly. As always, DaVinci YRGB, because I'm working in a CST workflow. I've got my timeline color space set to DaVinci Wide Gamma Intermediate, and my output is Rec 79 Gamma 2.2. Now, because it's set to 2.2, I need to make sure my monitor is set to 2.2, which it is. 2.4 for broadcast, 2.2 for the web. And I've got loads of episodes on color management if you want to check those out. So there's nothing on here yet. Okay, these are all empty nodes. I've just labeled them up. So we're going to start with our first CST. So this is D-log M. So what I'm going to do is go to my effects. I'm going to take my color space transform, drop it on, and we're going to go input color space, and we're going to choose DJI Gamut, and input color space is going to be D-log, and our output color space, DaVinci Wide Gamut, and DaVinci Intermediate. Okay, and we're going to send that up to here. We're going to grade in our DaVinci Wide Gamut color space, and we're going to come back down here and put our output CST on there, as we always do. I'm going to go DaVinci Wide Gamut. I'm going to go DaVinci Intermediate. And we're going to output this to Rec 79 Gamma 2.2. All right, so there we go. There's our starting point. So whilst this now doesn't look log, it looks terrible. Okay, let's have a look at our scopes. Let me just open these out. You can see on the waveform here, we've got very high contrast. We've got super saturation going on. And bear in mind, I've not even touched this yet. I haven't done a single bit of grading on it. So what's going wrong here? What's going wrong here is we are using, on our first CST, the input is not DJI D-Gamut, DJI D-log. So even though the setting on the Osmo is called D-log M, it's not in fact log. It is in fact Rec 709. This is very similar to the drone one that I did, where you think it's log, you think it's D-log because it says it's log. So in order to do this correctly, I need to go to the DJI website and download the correct LUT. So let me show you that. I'll put a link to this page in the description, but you've got plenty of different options here depending on what DJI product you've got. I've got the Osmo Pocket 3, so I'm going to download the Osmo Pocket 3 D-log M to Rec 709 LUT. This one here is some looks, so it's DJI Pocket 3 to different looks, but we're going to create our own look. So once you've downloaded that, you need to install as ever. If you go to the settings page, go to color management, and here you can open the LUT folder, and in here is where you install the LUT. So I've got it set here, DJI D-log M to 709, and there it is. You're then going to update the list here, and you're going to maybe restart DaVinci Resolve. Okay, so what we're going to do now is avoid using this CST at the beginning. We don't want to work with a CST at the beginning. I'm going to switch that off. And then all the nodes that I've got up here are what are just going to be our look, okay? They're just up there out of the way. So down here, I've got an empty node called LUT. And what I'm going to do is right click on here. I'm going to take the LUT that we've just installed, and it's here, and I'm going to apply it. Now, we've got a lot going on here because we've got a LUT and we've got a CST, so we need to just address that. But we're going to grade underneath this LUT. This is the important bit. I'm not going to put the LUT at the beginning, so I'm not going from D-log M to 709 early. I'm going to do it at the end. So we're going to grade under it, which allows us to work, whilst it's a Rec 709 look, it does have a bit more dynamic range than just straight 709. So it allows us to take maximum advantage of that extra little bit of dynamic range. It's not as big as HLG, but we're going to come to that later. So what do we need to set this CST to? We don't actually need it. If we switch it off, we've got no CSTs in our workflow, and we've got a nice looking image. So this is now D-log M to Rec 79. It looks great. Why have I got CST on the end? Well, the reason is this LUT here is giving us Rec 79 with a gamma of 2.4. So let me show you that. If I go to my CST, let's switch it on, and it put my inputs here to be Rec 79. Next input here, Rec 79, and I'm going to put a gamma of 2.4 on here, and I'm going to show you if I switch that node on and off, the image doesn't change. So that's how I know it's gamma 2.4. We want to export as gamma 2.2 because we're going to export for this for the web. So that's why I set that to 2.2. So I need to change the LUT from gamma 2.4 to gamma 2.2. And to do that, I just switch here. So that's all this CST is doing on the end. It's taking our Rec 79 and outputting it to gamma 2.2 and not 2.4. I'll just show you the difference. Okay, it's only a subtle difference, but we want it to be like that. Especially if you're doing multiple deliverables, you might be doing a 2.4 and a 2.2. It's really easy to switch then. All right, so let's start with our balance. Now this is looking pretty well balanced actually. I'm going to go to the HDR tool. I'm just going to check my exposure and let's just have a look. Let's go back to the primaries and use our offset and just see if we need to pull that around a little bit, just to cool it off slightly. And let's go to our contrast and saturation one here. I'm going to just add a little bit of primary contrast in there. So once we've got it balanced, we're now going to do the little tips and tricks that I wanted to show you. Now, because we've got the color management right, the grade bit, it just follows the same way that I've graded on all my other episodes. It doesn't matter if it's Arri or Sony, because the color management's good, we're just doing regular grading. But what I find with the Osmo Pocket 3 is that the image is a little bit soft. So what I'm going to do is just zoom in a little bit. Let me just show you. So let's take the detail here. You can see the brickwork actually just needs a little bit more crunch. So I'm going to go to this node here. I've labeled it MD, which is for midtone detail. And if we go to our primary tools here, midtone detail, normally I'm using this to sort of soften faces maybe, but I'm just going to wind it the other way. So we're going to use it as a sharpening tool. And I find it's a little bit less aggressive than actually using sharpening. So there we go. I'm just going to exaggerate it a little bit. And if I enable and disable that node, you can see what's going on there. Now, another thing that I use on this sort of footage, like for drones and that sort of thing, is a thing called texture pop. Now, I've covered this before, but I'm just going to cover it again slightly in this one. Go to our texture pop here, and if you just do a search in here for texture pop, I'm going to drag and drop it on. Now this is a great effect on footage like this. Watch this. So I'm going to go into here. I'm going to go to the advanced setting. I'm going to go color mode, not RGB, because with sharpness I want to be looking at the luminance really. So I'm going to change the mode from RGB into luminance. And I'm just going to give this a little bit more texture. So what I'm going to do is go to this thing called differences. Now that I'm in Luma and Chroma, what's happening is the Chroma is dealt with here and the luminance is dealt with here. So I'm just going to work on the Luma side. And this mode, this difference mode, shows me what is being affected. Now I'm looking at working on a sort of mids and high range in the frequencies. So these are your frequencies here. And let's start off with tiny. And as I move this, you can see what's being affected. So obviously this way is smooth and this way is sharpen. And not much happening in tiny. I'm just going to push this and I just want to see how much I can get in there subtly. I don't want to overdo it. I don't want to affect faces either. There's not really faces in this one, but I just want to make sure that brickwork gets a little bit more love. All right, something like that. So let's take off the differences and have a look what we've got going on now. And if I switch that on and off, look at the difference that's making. Let me zoom in even more for you. So all the brickwork has really started to come alive. Even the woodwork on this boat has got a much nicer feel now. The window frames even, and even the text here. So texture pop and midtone detail, two really good things to use with particularly things like the Osmo and drones and things like that. The next one I've got here is look development. So you might want to start looking at working with, I use things like Dehancer or DCTL. So let me show you quickly what I did do. If I go back to the previous version, the actual version I used, so this is just a small fixed node tree that I've got. There is the initial CST, which we took off. If I disable and enable that, you'll see it's not actually active because there's nothing set on it. There's our output CST, so it's going to gamma 2.2. Here's the LUTs that we put on, so it's the DJI LUTs. And you can see here my texture pop. And this one here is midtone detail. It's just in a slightly different node tree. I've got loads of episodes on how my node trees work. But this one here is a DCTL that I've used. It's one of Mononodes DCTLs. And what I've done on here, if I just switch that on and off, you'll see that I've just worked on the reds. And it's really helping brickwork. It's helping this sign, her coat. That's off and that's on, and I really like what it's doing. I've adjusted the blues a little bit as well. You see how subtle I've been using this, but this is a great DCTL. So this one is the color shift one, but I've done whole episodes on DCTLs. I'll put a link to that in the description as well. So most of this montage was shot D-log M, but I did shoot a few clips in the normal mode and HLG. So let's take a look at how to grade those correctly. I've got one in normal mode and one in the HLG mode. And as you can see, they're looking in a good starting point. And that's because I've done the color management already. So I'm going to reset that and show you exactly what I did. The grading is exactly the same as I did on the D-log M. All right, so what's this one? This is shot in normal mode. So what I've got going on here is one CST. I've taken off the D-log M Lut because obviously it's not D-log M, and I've gone to here. This is my initial CST, all the grading we've done up here, And we've got Rec 709, Rec 709, because that's what it is. So when you're shooting in normal mode, it's Rec 709. So I'm taking that up to DaVinci Wide Gamut as I always do. We'll grade in a nice large DaVinci Wide Gamut color space, and then we bring it back down at the end with our DaVinci Wide Gamut to Rec 709 Gamma 2.2. If you want to go 2.4, change that to 2.4, but make sure your monitor is 2.4. So the final shot was recorded in HLG, so we need to set that up in our color management. Go to our CST, you see I've switched off the LUT here. We don't want this D-log LUT on there. We're going to go to our color management here, and HLG needs an input color space setting of Rec 2100, and the input gamma is Rec 2100 HLG. And then we're going to go to DaVinci Wide Gamut and DaVinci Intermediate, as we always do. That's our grading color space that we're working in. And then our output is going to come back from DaVinci Wide Gamut, because we've sent it to DaVinci Wide Gamut here. Output color space Rec 709, and output gamma 2.2 or 2.4, whatever you're working with. And then we grade it just as we did on the D-log M footage. So I've done a similar episode on exactly how I grade drone footage and the settings that I use for that, and a couple of little tips and techniques. That episode's going to appear around about here somewhere. If you like this sort of content, think about subscribing for me. I really do appreciate it. And hit the notification bell, the like button. Drop me a comment if you want to see me grade other formats. I will try my best for you. Look after yourselves, and I'll see you in the next episode.